Ozempic Personality. Can the GLP-1 medications like Ozempic actually change your personality? The very core and foundation of what makes you, you. Now, if you believed everything you read on the internet, that might be the case. You see, a number of people on the internet are noting that they're experiencing feelings of anxiety, depression, and anhedonia, or lack of pleasure in life and doing things. Now, Ozempic Personality is by no means an official medical diagnosis, and I have a bit of a problem with the word personality because when it says something can change your personality, the core of who you are, well, that sounds really scary and big and, kind of something that's being taken up by mainstream media to sell more headlines. But really what it sounds like is some people are noticing a change in their mood and how they go about experiencing life. But I digress. The real question here is, can Ozempic and Wegovy actually change your mood or cause mood disturbances? When we look at the literature, thus far, it doesn't look like the GLP-1 based medications can cause depression, anxiety, or suicidal ideation. In fact, they may actually help to manage and prevent those things from occurring. And I have done a couple of videos on the depression, suicidal ideation piece of things. You can go down below and check them out if you want a lot more detail. Regardless, people are reporting those feelings and symptoms on the internet, and they're certainly valid. So what else could be going on? And just briefly here for a really sad statistic in that only 20% of you that are currently watching this video are right now subscribed to my channel. So I want to encourage every single one of you to go down below, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications so that you don't miss out when I put out another video, but you'll also make sure you're staying up to date on all of the great and fantastic content that I'm creating, and you get to make me feel real good about myself. Now, changes in mood with individuals that are struggling with obesity is not necessarily new. It has definitely been reported before in individuals that are not only on GLP-1 based medications, but also individuals that have undergone bariatric surgery. Following the surgery, some people do report feelings of depression and suicidal ideation. And something to keep in mind here initially is that the interplay between mood disorders and obesity is really quite complex. In fact, having obesity may actually put you at an increased risk of developing a mood disorder because of things like inflammation. And generally, for most people, when they lose weight, we've actually seen their mood improve. But we still have this group of individuals that have either used the medication or undergone bariatric surgery. They're losing weight, they should be reducing their inflammation and such, but yet they're still getting these negative symptoms and feelings. Now, some of the ideas that have been tossed around to explain what these individuals are experiencing are things like having an unmet expectation, so losing weight and ultimately not reaching the goal weight that you expected to meet. Ultimately, that leads to unmet expectations, and you can start feeling pretty crappy about yourself, especially if you're dealing with any kind of internalized weight bias. For some, it's thought that maybe it's the severe, significant side effects that they're experiencing, so daily nausea, heartburn, in worst case scenarios, vomiting and stuff like that. And ultimately, maybe these medications aren't right for these individuals if they're causing so much distress and side effects that it's causing you to actually have a deterioration in your mood. Then yeah, that could be something that's going on there. It could also be due to a decrease in your caloric intake or not getting enough or adequate amounts of nutrients. Ultimately, that causes a decrease in your energy levels, and a decrease in energy levels can certainly affect your mood. As well, I've certainly seen symptoms of anxiety and agitation arise for some individuals that we start on these medications. And in those cases, we've actually found that it's kind of a hangriness, right? If you've ever experienced being hangry when you've gone too long without food, well, you know what I'm talking about. But in this case of things, if you're taking a medication or have undergone surgery, those things are kind of masking that symptom of hunger that usually comes along with being hangry, so we just get more of the angry part of things. Or another idea is that it's the bias and stigma that individuals with obesity experience. It would be kind of like you suddenly lose weight and people start treating you better, they're nicer to you, or you start getting more attention from the opposite sex. And these things arise because society is full of a bunch of assholes and ultimately are biased against fat people. And you can probably understand that suddenly getting treated better because you lost weight, well, that's going to be a pretty shitty feeling. So that's some of the current ideas, but maybe there could be something more there. It certainly is possible that there's some aspect that these drugs are interacting with in the reward system that we haven't quite discovered. Maybe it's in a select group of individuals, maybe it's something more global, but ultimately we haven't found the exact mechanism or background behind it, so that could be something there. In fact, the GLP-1 based medications are being investigated right now for their use in treating addictions like alcohol addiction, tobacco, and cocaine use. Some other people are thinking maybe it's the emotional eating part. You take the medication, suddenly you can't emotionally engage with the foods that you used to in the past, and so now you've got to sit there and like be with your emotions and feel them and all that kind of stuff. And if all you had was a coping mechanism of going to food in order to cope, well, suddenly you don't have any tools or skills to do it. You're sitting there with your emotions and things can get rocky. So I could certainly see that being something that's potentially there. But another idea that I've been kind of spitballing around a little bit is a bit of a combination of my two previous points. So let's give you a bit of background here. We know that ultra-processed foods that are high in fat, salt, sugar, and food additives can ultimately cause a level of dopamine in your brain to increase. And those foods are really good at triggering the reward pathways in the brain. It's almost like they've been engineered and billions of dollars have been put into them to get you to eat as much of them as possible and to keep wanting to eat and crave them over and over again. And in fact, we know that the ultra-processed foods that we have available to us in our modern day are actually a big contributor to the obesity epidemic. Now, let's back things up to the day that you were born, and coming out of that womb, you didn't come out and say like, where's the cookies and cake? You see, our brains have to first interact with the cookies and cake in order to learn to crave them and want them down the road. Now, most of us probably don't remember when we tried our first cookie or our first piece of cake, but I can tell you what probably happened when your taste buds and your nose first interacted with those scrumptiously gooey, delicious amazingness, opening up the heavens and God coming down foods, that they were getting a massive dump of dopamine and your brain was lighting up like a Christmas tree. And your brain was like, this is fucking amazing. We need to remember everything about this moment, where we're at, what is the food we're eating, so that we can learn and know when this food is going to be in the environment again, and we can expect it and go for it. And then the next time that you're in that environment, perhaps it's grandma's house, perhaps you just smell it out on the street, whatever the case may be, your brain is going to start increasing the levels of dopamine in your brain before you even taste that cookie again. This dump of dopamine will continue to build in order to increase your wanting and your desire to have the cookie. And your brain wants to get it to such a point that you automatically say, well, don't mind if I do have another cookie. And again, we get more dopamine, we get more serotonin, we get more of all of these reward chemicals and such being dumped into our brain. And that then reinforces this pathway that, hey, grandma's house, there's cookies there. We want to go to grandma's house. And every single time that you engage with the cookie, with the cake, or whatever delicious treat it is that you love, you're going to continue reinforcing that pathway and making it stronger and stronger. Now, if we add in a piece of genetics, where some of us might feel like we eat cookies and cake and such like that, almost in a compulsive, addictive type manner, we then add another layer, which can make it more challenging in dealing with, treats and such like that are in our environment. And if you find that you're compulsively eating the cookies and cake over and over and over again, or constantly looking for that next delicious treat or what have you, well, eventually your brain is going to say, hey, you know what? This is way too much dopamine. We're going to down-regulate some things here because we're getting a little bit flooded, a little bit overwhelmed. And, we don't want to be doing this because it isn't great long-term for us, all right? And so in response, your brain is going to desensitize. It is going to reduce the number of receptors that are available for dopamine to bind to. And hey, if you're looking for some additional support in learning how to manage cravings, how to manage compulsive eating behaviors and such like that, then you definitely need to check out the links down below. You can sign up for a free consultation with myself and we can see if you're a good fit and match for our program, where we can help you in supporting your cravings, your wanting of food, and your weight, not only today, but forever. So be sure to check it out, book in with myself, and I can't wait to start helping you. Now, this whole desensitization thing is perfectly okay as long as you're compulsively still eating the cookies, cake, and that sort of thing. But if you suddenly take a drug like Ozempic, Wegovy, and what have you, and you suddenly drastically reduce your input of cookies, well, we're going to run into a bit of a problem. You see, suddenly your brain is no longer getting this massive dump of dopamine and other rewarding chemicals because the cookies are no longer coming in. You're having things like salad and, mundane, boring things that just don't produce that same level of dopamine. And unfortunately, most things in our day-to-day lives just don't produce that high level of dopamine that your brain is ultimately wanting because, well, it has very few receptors currently available. It's desensitized. The regular levels of dopamine just don't do it for you anymore. You're not getting your feel-good feelings, and thus you can start to see a change in your mood. You could certainly become depressed because you're not getting pleasure from anything anymore. You could get a decline in pleasure with day-to-day activities and stuff like that because, well, nothing's giving you that dump of dopamine. And yeah, you could certainly develop anxiety and other mood changes in response to this. And then if we top it all off with an underlying mood disorder, well, this could all get exacerbated and thus we then get depression, anxiety, or Ozempic personality. Now, the good news is that if this is the case that's going on, what should occur is that your brain should resensitize itself. It's just going to take some time. Your brain can eventually increase the number of receptors that are available so that the lower amounts of dopamine that you're receiving ultimately bind to those receptors and produce those feel-good pleasure responses to normal day-to-day things, and it can help you to manage your mood, no longer feel depressed, and actually get pleasure from everything that you do in your life. Of course, this is all barring that you're not engaging in some other kind of highly pleasurable, rewarding things like doing lines of cocaine suddenly. In conclusion, though, this is a lot of speculation and a very simplified idea in terms of what actually happens inside of the brain when you eat food, particularly those highly ultra-processed foods. We have a lot more things that are going on outside of the dopamine. We've got the endocannabinoid system, we've got serotonin that's involved, we've got oxytocin. There's so many things that are involved in interacting and overlaying all of this process that it's probably not just a dopamine thing, but dopamine may be a potential part of it. Regardless, if you are currently struggling with your mental health and you're taking one of these medications or on a weight loss journey or what have you, please, please, please reach out to your care team and your care providers as well. Contact your friends, family, and anybody else that provides support to you in your life and get the necessary help that you need in order to keep yourself safe. So that is it, and that is all, you beautiful people. Hopefully that provided you a little bit of insight, maybe some ideas to ponder and stuff like that. Of course, as we get more research and things come about in this regard of things, I will of course keep you updated. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. As well, turn on your notifications and share the video with anybody else that you think might enjoy it. As well, don't forget to sign up for the OG Members membership side of my YouTube channel, where you get some exclusive early releases of my videos and you can watch them before anybody else. As well, every single month with the OG Members, I do a live where we talk about topics that don't show up on my regular YouTube feed. Everything you need is in the description down below. The links, the PDFs, you name it, it is all there. So be sure to check it out. And as I always sign off, please remember that it's the small tweaks that lead to the massive peaks.